Hey, Larkin Rose. First order of business here is I want to remind people that on June 3rd, there will be the first screening of the final version of the Jones Plantation movie. That will be happening at a little theater down in Tempe, which is southeastern Phoenix, Arizona, Saturday night on June 3rd. Link below to get tickets and to get directions and stuff like that. We're already over halfway to being sold out after like 4 days of announcing it. So if you want tickets, hurry up or you're going to miss out. The only other scheduled screening, there will be lots all over the country, so be hopefully a little bit patient. The only one scheduled for sure, other than the Phoenix one, is the end of June up in New Hampshire at Porcfest. On the 21st of June, it will be shown there too. I'll include a link for that below too. But the real purpose of this video is to talk about what I hope to accomplish with the Jones Plantation movie. Because it's one thing for pro-freedom people to see a thing and go, rah, 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 that's awesome, but who cares? Like, if it doesn't have an impact on people who aren't already on the same page, kind of what's the point? Like, the goal isn't just to preach to the choir. And the reason I think this has so much potential to get a whole lot more people thinking about stuff, and the reason I thought that from the beginning when Andrew, the director of the movie, first suggested the idea, because it was his idea to make my little animated thing that I did, I forget how many years ago, to make that into a full movie. When you tell a story to somebody, you put it in the setting of fiction, they can just sort of relax. They're not on the spot. Their own beliefs aren't being like challenged. And it's just, you're telling them a story about fictional people going through a thing, and they can see things and they can learn things. I've talked before about how it's a little bit like if there's some magic trick and you see some magician do something and you go, ooh and ah, and how did he do that? That was amazing. Holy smokes. Then if you learn how he did that, and then you watch him do the trick again, you go, oh, that's clever. Doesn't fool me anymore because now I know how it works, but that's kind of neat. And then the more times you watch it, the more you're like, that's kind of obvious. Like, not sure why that fooled me to begin with, but I mean, it's tricky, it's cool, but now I see through it and it won't ever trick me again now that I understand it. Well, basically, the Jones Plantation is a way to show the current reality we live in to people in the setting of a fictional story so that they see a bunch of the tricks, and when they wander out into the real world, they look around and go, oh, yeah, there's all those same tricks happening, only now I know what goes on behind the scenes and I know why they do it and why they say it that way. Now, the original little animated thing was only like 10 minutes long or something. And it couldn't cover very much, and it was just little, it was still shots of sketches, and somebody else did the narration and stuff. Like, it's hard to get all that dramatic and get into a story that's some sketches for 10 minutes. Still, a lot of people liked it and said it was powerful, and they shared it all over the place. But in a real movie, when you can feel the characters, like they're people going through this, it's a lot more intense and it's a lot more engaging. And I think the story in and of itself is going to be engaging for people, and it's going to be entertaining, just the entertainment value alone. But in the process, telling a story that will make people learn the tricks. Now, in the animated one, it covers the concept of democracy, if we'll give them two oppressors to choose from and pretend that that's the same as freedom. Well, the movie version covers that, but it also covers a lot of things. I'm not going to do anything specific enough to be spoilers, but it covers things like monetary policy, doesn't call it that, but you see things relating to that. You see things relating to the concept of a false flag, and manipulation and pitting people against each other, and the political left versus the political right, and the different ways they try to win over some of the crowd. And it gets into some things that most people, even most pro-freedom people, haven't even thought about before. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of any of that because the movie itself does that. But I did want to explain the power that it has when you're telling a story that the person you're talking to they're not in the story, so that nothing is invested for them. They're not on the spot. They're not being challenged. They're just reading or listening to or watching a story about somebody else. And in this case, it depicts the reality of oppression in a way I've never seen any other movie do. Because so often movies, the villain is just like, hey, I'm evil and I'm going to rule the world. Nobody rises to power doing that anymore. Like, if they ever did, which they didn't anyway. But in modern times, that never ever happens. The tyrannical psychos who get into power, they are cheered into power by adoring throngs who fell for the BS of the tyrant, not because the tyrant said, empower me and I'll do evil things, but because he said, empower me and I'll serve you and I'll help you and I'll make this great and yada, 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 yada. So people will learn that, but when you see the specific machinations of psychos and the way they really do it in real life, which I've never seen depicted in a movie before, when the viewer of the movie walks out and goes about his daily life after that, I think a lot of people, even normal people who don't think about these things and, don't have a philosophical bone in their body, they're going to notice over and over again the patterns and oh yeah, this is what we saw in the Jones Plantation. Oh, and that's what that is. Oh, and that's why they're doing that. And that's why they're saying this and And they'll see through the trick. And that's the thing is, once somebody sees through the trick and knows how it's done, the trick doesn't work on them anymore because they see it and they go, oh yeah, I recognize that. I saw that in action. And the thing is, if you go up to somebody and you tell them, like, did you know that your currency is blah, 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 it's not federal and there are no reserves and blah, 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 in the 1913 Federal Act or Federal Reserve Act, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are like, I don't even care if that's true. I don't know if it is, but it's confusing. It's academic. It's annoying. I don't care. I don't want to think about it. Which is sad. I'm not saying hooray for people for being that way, but that's just how most people think. But if you show it to them in a way where it's a different setting and they're not on the receiving end, so they don't have to go through the scary process of wondering if the people who are in power in their country are evil, conniving psychopaths. They're just watching some other story that happened in some other place or some other time. But still, the process of them learning how those tricks work, I think will make a lot of people way, way better at seeing through the tricks. And that's one thing that the movie does. Well, there's a lot of things. One of the main things the movie does that the little animated thing couldn't do is show both sides. So mostly in the animated thing, you see what the workers were told, what they heard when Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson came out and gave their speeches and said stuff. And so you heard the propaganda that they got. And even just from that, you can go, yeah, I would see how people would fall for this and think, rah, 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 these people are here to help us and serve us and stuff like that. Well, in the movie, you get both sides. You get what the workers get to see, but you also get the behind the scenes of Smith teaching Jones and Johnson how these things work, what he's doing and why. And the thing is, Andrew's a director and I'm not. So I had the tendency to write really long explanations and Andrew's going, okay, now make it this long and we're going to show them. Like, we'll show them enough that the audience will figure out what's going on without having to have a mile-long explanation, which makes the movie, a million times better than it would have if we included all my long-winded explanations. So it makes it a challenge trying to convert it from one setting. Because, when it's written word, when it's in a book, you can just go on and on. People are expecting to read words, that's all it is. But in a movie, you want to show action and people doing stuff. So to translate it over, it took a lot of effort and rewrites and stuff, but I think he did an awesome job of making it almost all show, don't tell, and yet still having all the points that all the major points be obvious to people as they see, oh, that's what's going on, and that's clever. And I want them to see for the first time a villain who's actually believable and actually does what real world villains actually do, because you don't see that in movies. I mean, not just like, oh, here's a serial killer who goes berserk and murders some people, but the people who actually rise to power, how do they actually do that? And most people have no idea how that happens, and they watch the movies, and most Hollywood writers have no idea how that happens, as demonstrated by the fact that it happens to them and they vote for the tyrannical psychos who play those same games. So of course Hollywood doesn't know it. They're supporting the tyrants. They don't recognize the tricks. So they just think, oh, those meanie conservatives who must be racist or something, but they're mean, and my rulers and leaders that boss me around and take my stuff, they're the good ones. So people in Hollywood don't understand the tricks, which is why you've never seen the tricks actually portrayed in an accurate way in any movie, because the people who make movies in Hollywood have no stinking idea what the tricks are, because they're falling for them. They're still empowering them. They're still playing the game. They're still the workers on the plantation who are cheering for their own subjugators. Well, this movie is going to be very different, and a bunch of people in the movie who saw the script, who they didn't know who I was or anything about what I believe or anything, but they saw the script, and a number of like the main characters in there who never knew anything about me, the actors playing them, said, whoa, I've never seen a script anything like this. This is kind of amazing, which I was thrilled to hear. But I think my main point here is that there are ways for people to learn things that doesn't personally put them on the spot. And it's sort of like if you go up to somebody and say, oh, by the way, your spouse is secretly a serial killer, they're not going to want that to be true. So they're going to, no, what are you talking about? But if you show them a movie about some serial killer they don't know in some other place, in some fictional story, and they see the telltale signs and the tricks and the manipulations, and they start to go, wait a minute, my spouse does a lot of that stuff, and let them figure it out in the real life version after they learn in the abstract fictional sense, here's how the tricks work, then they're sort of free to put two and two together without being on the spot, and while it's rattling around inside their own head, to figure out, oh yeah, that really does apply to reality, like a lot of it. And I think that's going to happen to like a huge percentage of the people who watch it. Because a lot of people can watch V for Vendetta or The Matrix or Hunger Games, and they can go, rah, rah, rah for the freedom underdogs, boo for the authoritarians. Who are you going to vote for this week? Like, they totally miss the parallels, and they just think, well, over in that story, there's these Nazi... That's because they're not really depicting what the actual psychos in real life do to gain power. Well, this one does, even though it does it in a different setting, in a fictional story, kind of fictional. I mean, the specific story is fictional, but what they do is totally real. But it allows them the freedom to learn those tricks and go, wow, that's clever. And again, like I've said before, unlike pretty much any other movie, I don't want the viewers to end up going, yeah, I would have cheered for the good guy. I want them walking out of the theater, or after they watch it in their living room or wherever, thinking, I'm pretty sure I would have been on the wrong side. I would have fallen for that. Those tricks and those manipulations, I probably would have been cheering for the bad guy. And I want them to realize that, in the hopes that later on they'll realize, ooh, holy crap, I am cheering for the bad guys. Because they are. Whether they're cheering for voting for Mr. Jones or Mr. Johnson, they're cheering for the bad guys. Not on purpose, not because they're nasty. But if they don't have the freedom to learn the trick in the abstract in a fictional sense, and then slowly figure out, oh crap, that's what's going on in the real world, then it more puts them on the spot, and it comes across as preachy and stuff. And like, it's not preachy to say, here's bad people in slave days, doing bad things to oppress slaves. Like, is anybody going to be shocked that bad things were done to oppress slaves? Yeah, we all know that. That was heinously evil. But now people can watch the specifics and make the connection to the specifics of what go on a daily basis in their actual real life. And it's just, after Andrew pointed out, we could make this thing a movie, it occurred to me, better than any of the, I don't know how many hundreds of videos I've made and some little animated things and some other stuff, but this by far makes the best thing to make into a movie, because it's telling a fictional story in a different setting, so people don't have to be on the spot, they don't have to feel attacked. They don't have to feel like it's telling them they're bad, because they're not there. Unless you were around in 1850 in the, antebellum South, this movie isn't about you. The story isn't about you. But the realities it teaches are timeless. Not timeless, beauteous, glorious truths, timeless, horrible, conniving, evil truths that have been around for a very long time. So I think that's why, to me, it's so important to just outright beg people, all the pro-freedom people. I don't care what you think of it. I know pro-freedom people are going to go, whoa, that was awesome. Like, it isn't, there's a few cool quotes from that. It's like the whole stinking movie is like an hour and a half of memes and quotes put together into an actually coherent and compelling story. And Andrew did an awesome job of making a movie out of it. And so, but what I want it for is not the pro-freedom people going, yeah, that's rah, rah, rah. The purpose of it is not to preach to the choir. The purpose of it is to get this to the rest of the world, to start them thinking. And the beauty of this particular approach is that nobody has to feel attacked or like they're on the spot because you're telling them. It's not like, here, watch this movie that'll tell you that you're an evil piece of crap. It doesn't do that to anybody, unless somebody watching this is literally a slave owner, in which, yeah, you should tell them they're a piece of crap. But they can be, detached from the story itself and still learn a whole lot about reality, and then let their own brain piece it together after they've seen the thing and are going about their daily lives, and they see a political ad, or they're chatting to their friends, or they're, who are you going to vote for next? And starting to realize more and more, wow, I know those tricks. I've seen those tricks. Now I know how they work. And now I know that I was falling for them. And by the way, that's totally true of me. Back a quarter of a century ago, when I was still politically involved, I was totally falling for it. I was totally falling for all of the tricks that in fact, I think every single one of them, the tricks that the Jones Plantation demonstrates and shows in the setting of a story, I didn't see through any of that back when I believed in, representative government, democracy, and all that fun stuff. And so I would really encourage people, and do it as just an experiment. If you have somebody and you get into arguments and discussions with them all the time, and whether they're friendly or hostile arguments or whatever, have them see it and see what they think about it. See the things in their brain that it triggers, and see what it makes them think, and see what they think it's about. Because different people are going to notice different pieces. And I think over time they're going to notice more and more pieces as they start to piece it together. And to me, I'll end with this. To me, the interesting thing was that most of the cast and the crew of the movie, they're not voluntarists. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know anything about me. They probably still don't, a lot of them, because that wasn't their job to research the writer. Their job was, okay, learn this and do your part and whatever. But having little talks and discussions with them here and there in between, making a stinking movie, getting little bits and pieces of what they think it's about, and watching their brain trying to process it. But the coolest thing wasn't that they all processed it the same, because they didn't. It's that, one, they all processed it differently, but two, they all processed it. They were all thinking about stuff and talking about stuff, and, well, I think it means this, and maybe this means it. None of them were like, whatever. Everyone I talked to had ideas about what it triggered thought. And isn't that the whole challenge we have, is to trigger people to start questioning this stuff? And so I think this has massive potential to do this to the whole world. Now, like I said before, we're going to set up a thing where, sort of a package where people can take the movie, call up a local theater, see and they can arrange to have a showing, and we send them the movie, and then we get a cut, but they get a cut. So whoever sets it up can make money off of it. And by doing it that way, have it shown all over the place, including in your town, if you want to do that. And you can actually make some money off of it, and then we'll have a place where we can be announcing the different places it's showing and all that. But I'll get you the details of that once we have that all set up. But I just, with all the effort that went into this, and again, Andrew, the director, put in way more effort than I did, but I did some too. with all the effort that went into this, I would love to see this be a thing that's in front of millions and billions of people, like not just the US, the whole world, because of the power I think it has to make people think. Because that's, I mean, those of you who have thought about these ideas for ages, you're probably well aware that getting people to think is the hardest part. It's the biggest challenge. And this thing does that. And not everybody thinks of the same things. Not everybody thinks at the same speed or focuses on the same points. But it seems to make everybody think. And I'm really dang proud of that, of being able to be part of a project this big that not only makes a really dang good-looking movie that I think the story is compelling and interesting, but actually makes people think about things that actually matter. And so, please, first of all, get yourself to see it, because I think you'll think it's cool if you're a voluntarist. But then, get everybody who doesn't know what you know and who doesn't agree with what you believe, get all of them to see it too. Because I guarantee this thing is going to start a lot of in-depth, serious, important discussions with a lot of people who've never thought about these things before. And that's why we made this.